I'd like to welcome you to the New Knowledge Adventures class, South African Photo Safari, on this wintry day. A little bit about NKA, or New Knowledge Adventures, before we start. Over 15 years ago, a group of volunteers in the Pocatello area, in partnership with Idaho State University, created a lifelong learning program. Their goal was to create a program that was affordable access, and run by volunteers. Thus, NKA was born. In 2014, Idaho, or AARP Idaho, Idaho State University Meridian, and the Treasure Valley YMCA brought NKA to our area. This fall, 2020, because of the pandemic, Treasure Valley NKA decided to offer the classes virtually. This is our pilot year. We're learning a lot. Okay. Before we begin, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. As you were told in your email, all participants are muted. So if you want to ask a question of Jerry during the presentation, you'll use the chat box. Look at the lower part of your screen, and you probably need to have your mouse hovering down there. If you look at the bottom of your screen, right in the middle, you'll see a chat icon that looks like a word bubble. If you click on that, that will let you type your question, and that will appear on the right-hand side of your screen in the chat window. What we'll do is have several breaks during the presentation so that we can ask questions that are posed in the chat window. Participants can leave at any time if they need to. Again, put your cursor in the lower part of your screen, and on the right-hand side, you'll see a leave window. It's red, and if you click that, that will allow you to leave. Lastly, we would like to get your feedback. So if you look in the chat window on the right-hand side of your screen, you will see from Sheena Smith to everyone, a paragraph. And in that, there is a link, HTTPS, AARP, etc., that will lead you to the survey. We really do appreciate your feedback because that helps us improve NKA. So please use that link. I believe that Sheena will also be sending an email to you later with that link so that you can answer the survey. I believe that's it for our housekeeping. So let me introduce our speaker, our presenter. Jerry Finnegan is a retired businessman who loves to travel. He shared several of his adventures with us at NKA, including his P-48 trip around the perimeter of the lower 48. I saw that one, it was great. His AKA-49 motorcycle tour of Alaska and Western Canada, which I also saw, and his spiritual journey across northern Spain on the Camino de Santiago. Today, Jerry's going to share a South African photo safari with us. So Jerry, take it away.
Thank you, Carol. I might add to the things that you said. Normally, when we start these meetings, we tell
One second. Is everybody able to hear Jerry? I can't hear him.
I cannot hear him either, so I imagine no one can.
No, there's no sound.
Jerry, somehow your sound went away. We heard about the first sentence, and then let me see. Can you unmute yourself, Jerry?
I just did.
Okay, there you are. You're back.
Okay, I have no idea how that happened.
I don't either. We'll just start at the beginning there, and you're good to go. Thanks, Jerry.
Okay, so that's one of the things we'll have to do today is deal with technical issues that we don't normally have to deal with. Anyway, I was saying that it was almost exactly 2 years ago that I was at Madikwe Game Reserve in South Africa. And the pictures that I took there are what we'll be going through, some photos and some videos. And I have to apologize in advance for the quality of some of these pictures. At the time I went there, I was not thinking I was going to be making a presentation of this. I was actually there on my honeymoon. So, but I did promise NKA that I would make this the G-rated version of my honeymoon. So we'll stick to the wild animals that we'll see. But I'm hoping that the pictures are good enough to give you a feel for just how incredible it is to be sitting, in many cases, just a matter of a few feet away from wild animals in their home with no bars or windows between you. And it was an incredible, incredible experience. It actually, my wife and I, we were both blown away by this experience. So that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. If I can get things to work here. Okay, so the place where we were staying was the Tau Game Lodge, and we'll get back to that here in just a little minute. But we are going to be talking about the Madikwe Game Reserve in South Africa. And of course, any trip when you go halfway around the world, in this case, about 10,000 miles, begins at home. And in our particular case, we set up, although there was a variety of different ways we could have gotten there, we set up our plane trip in 3 legs. The first leg was to the Dallas-Fort Worth area to visit briefly with my daughter and her husband. One of the things we did there was we went and saw these wild animals, the longhorn steers that parade twice a day down through the streets of Fort Worth. And of course, while we were in Dallas, we had to take in the 6th floor National Museum at the old Texas Book Depository. And it's something that probably most baby boomers do the first time they're in Dallas. So that was something that we enjoyed immensely. But before we knew it, our time there was done. And we went back to the airport, grabbed lunch, waited for our plane, and hopped on the plane. The next leg of this trip was a long one. Not only was the flight 9 hours between Dallas-Fort Worth and Heathrow Airport in London, but we also crossed 6 time zones. So in effect, when we got off the plane, it was 15 hours later than when we had left. As we were coming into land in Heathrow, I had never been to London before. So as we were coming in, the sun was coming up. I looked out the window and I saw the river down below. I said, oh, I got to snap a photo of this. And I didn't know for sure what I was taking a picture of, but I did manage to get a picture of some of the typical landmarks that tourists go to see when they're in London. However, our layover in London was 12 hours. And although that sounds like a lot of time, we just didn't feel comfortable leaving the airport, trying to see anything on a tour bus and then make it back to the airport in time. So we spent our time in the American Airlines Admirals Club, which you can get into for a nominal fee that's not necessarily nominal. It was kind of expensive, but it was really nice for a 12-hour layover. We had free food and drink all the time we were there. And they had a good buffet meal set out there for everybody. It gave us a chance to recharge our devices' batteries and recharge our batteries both. There was comfortable seating, plenty of places to plug into USB ports. And before we knew it, the 12-hour layover was over, and we were getting back on the plane for the next leg of the trip. Now, this leg of the trip was from Heathrow Airport in London to Johannesburg, South Africa. This was a 14-hour plane trip, but because we were going basically north and south, we only crossed 1 time zone. So again, it was a 15-hour time difference from when we got on the plane to when we got off the plane. We flew into OR Tambo Airport in Johannesburg. And on the way, of course, it got dark and then it got light again. But about 2 o'clock in the morning, I was watching the monitor on the seat in front of me, and I saw that we were crossing the equator. This is the first time in my life for that. So I took a picture of the monitor to show that we crossed the Congo River in the middle of Africa, basically. And at that exact point, we were also crossing the equator. The particular town or city that we were over at the time is, it's kind of hard to make it out there, but it's called Mbandaka. And Mbandaka is also known as Equator City. It was founded back in 1883, like the sign says there. It was originally named in French and it has since been translated into Afrikaans. And that's one of the 40 different languages spoken in the Congo. I sometimes refer to this as a village, even though they have a population of 350,000 in that town. And had we been on the ground instead of in the air, we would have seen that it's a very large city. But even as large as it is, it's very, very poor. There are still parts of the city that do not have electricity or running water. And so it's very poor right in the middle of Africa, right on the equator. So continuing on, we eventually landed in Johannesburg. It's a city of 5.8 million people. It's in the, I would say, east central portion of South Africa, as you can see on the map there. It is, I wanted to note, just north of Lesotho, which I found out is one of only 3 enclaves in the entire world. An enclave being an independent country that is completely surrounded by another independent country, and or independent entity, maybe I should say. The other 2 are San Marino in Italy, and of course the Vatican in Rome. So we flew into Johannesburg, and our ultimate goal was to get from there out to Madikwe Game Reserve. And so Madikwe is a area in north central South Africa. It is right on the Botswana border. It's considered to be in a malaria-free zone, although Botswana literally is across the road from the northern border of the park, and it is not a malaria-free zone. So I'm hoping that they have some way to figure out why those mosquitoes can't cross that border. But the game reserve itself is an area of about 290 square miles. To give you something to compare it to, it's about 1/3 the size of Ada County. So it's fairly good size. But back in the 90s, it was the site of one of the largest wildlife relocation projects in the history of the world. They relocated more than 8,000 animals of 27 major species into this area, and it took about 6 years to do that. The largest wildlife relocation was not something that went easily. I'm sure they had their challenges, but what they ended up with is a game reserve that is there for the touring public, more than the locals. The locals still live along the edges of this park. We have all these wild animals that do occasionally wander outside the park, but for the most part, everything is considered safe within the park. It is the home of the Big Five. The Big Five in Africa are the elephant, the rhinoceros, buffalo, leopard, and lion. And in addition to that, Madikwe is one of the few places in Africa that is the home of the Big Seven, which is the Big Five, plus they add the black rhino and the wild dog. I'll note at this point that we did not see either a black rhino or the wild dogs while we were there, but we did see lots of other animals in the process. Visitors to the park are required to spend the night, so there is no day traffic in the park. The professional game rangers are allowed off-road so they can go to where the animals are. You don't have to worry. For example, I took a tour of Denali and we spotted some grizzly bears, but because we were on the road and they were quite some distance from the road, it was not very good viewing. In this case, you literally can drive right up to the animals. To give you an idea of temperatures in the park, typically from summer, high temperatures in the 90s, winter, high temperatures in the 70s even. So that's typically it's warm, and the best time of year is to go during their winter. I'm sorry, during our winter, which is their spring, and that's usually April to August. So we got into this airport, grabbed our bags, and the next challenge was finding out how in the world do we find the person that's supposed to pick us up? We're in this huge airport. We go down this hallway that had no signs on it, went through this little man door, and it opened into this huge area. There's a big circle in the middle. And all of the people standing inside the circle had signs for the people that they were to pick up. So it was good to find that we could actually find the person that was going to drive us. Our driver was named Eric. He had a little sign. It was the first time I ever been at an airport, by the way, with somebody that had my name on a sign, but it was kind of neat. Eric was not only a driver that was going to drive us to the park, but he was also one of the rangers for one of the other game lodges. So he knew a lot about the parks and about the animals in the park. And so his first question was, do you want to take the quickest route or do you want to take the scenic route? And of course, we didn't travel 10,000 miles to take the quick route. So we opted for the scenic route. In this case, we went up through Sun City and entered the park on the southeast corner of the park instead of going around to the northwest corner of the park, which is where Tao is. Now, visitors are told that the park itself is safe. However, crime is virtually non-existent in the park, but getting there is another matter. They recommend that on the road going from the airport to the park, that you drive with your windows up, doors locked, and your valuables hidden in your car to be sure that you're safe on the way to the park. So once we get to the park, this is kind of give you an idea of how the park is laid out. There are 22 private game lodges within the park. If you look in the upper left-hand corner of the map, you'll see that Tao Game Lodge is kind of set off by itself, has a lot of area around it, whereas the others are more or less on top of each other. But what we were doing was we were going to enter the southeast corner down on, and you'll have to forgive me if I don't pronounce these correctly. It's not my native tongue. I believe it's Mualatiati gate on the southeast corner. You see there's a road on the map there, and that's where we were going to travel across the south end of the park on our way to eventually get to the Tao Game Lodge. So this is a picture of the gate, quote unquote gate, where we entered. And there really is nothing there. I mean, there was nobody in a booth taking tickets. There was nothing like that. It was just the road going into the park. There was nothing there to keep the animals from wandering out of the park. But apparently they know where they're safe and where their food sources are. And so very seldom do they have any of the animals actually wander out of the park. The ranger told us that they weren't really worried about the animals walking through the gates to get out of the park, because most of them can jump over the fence anyway. So why would they bother going all the way down to where the gate is? So just inside the park, we came to this first little watering hole, and some of the local residents were gathered there to cool off in the heat of the day, which really wasn't that bad. It was probably in the high 70s, and the weather was just beautiful. So we came there and also gathered around the watering hole. You can see the elephants in the background, the zebras, there was giraffes. You'll see off to the left, you see some impala. And when the camera swings back around to the right, if you look really quick back in the tree line, you'll see there's a couple of rhinoceros even wandering around back there. So while we were stopped observing at the watering hole, we turned around and looked out the other window, and here come this big lady wandering down the road on her way to the watering hole. And excuse me. So I couldn't help but wonder, though, as she wandered behind us, that if we happened to be parked at the point where she was going to cross that road, would she go around us or would she just move us out of the way? So I think our driver, Eric, probably knew where they were going to cross the road. So he deliberately did not stop there to test that theory. Excuse me. One of the first animals we saw away from the watering hole was the giraffe. And I've had a love affair with giraffes for a number of years now, since getting involved in bringing one of the giraffes to the Boise Zoo. And I've found out they're an incredible animal. Not only are they the tallest mammal on Earth, but they have evolved in such a way that, of course, they evolved for their survival. So the giraffe's main weapon as far as defending itself is its kick. It has long legs and it knows how to use them. They're capable of killing a lion with their kick. And for that reason, if they are attacked by lions usually do it in a group so that they can gang up on the giraffe. They're capable of eating vegetation out of the top of the trees, and they actually get the majority of the water that they need for survival from the vegetation that they eat. They very seldom will drink. And the reason for that is, although it doesn't appear that way, their neck is not long enough to reach the ground. So drinking is a problem. What the giraffe has to do to get water from a ground source is to spread their front legs way out to the side or to kneel down. And when they do that, they're very vulnerable to predators because they can't get back up and run or kick easily from that position. So this awkward position leaves them vulnerable. The predators, by the way, that a giraffe normally has to deal with is if they're drinking from water, would be crocodiles. Other than that, it's usually the lions are the ones that prey on the giraffes. They also have a couple other pretty unique body features because of their height. The distance from the heart to the head is quite long. And in order to pump blood to the brain, they have developed a very high blood pressure. So the high pressure gets the blood up to the brain. However, the problem is when they put their head down, all that blood pressure causes blood to rush to the head and they faint, or they would faint. So what Mother Nature has done through evolution is they've put a pressure regulator in the neck of the giraffe so that the blood pressure doesn't cause all the blood to rush to their head, and they can put their head up, they can put their head down, and they're just fine. The other thing about this high blood pressure is that when the blood is pumped down to their legs and their feet, in order to keep the blood from pooling there, the skin on their legs is very, very tight as a sock. So the blood is pumped down and it does flow back up to the heart again. So the next animal that we have here is the impala. And this is one of the pictures I have to apologize for. It's not focused very well. The impala were everywhere inside the park. These little guys are also known as the gazelle, and they are unfortunately one of the favorite food groups of the big cats. So the things that have happened to this animal through evolution that are an attempt to keep it safe are, first of all, the newborns are always born in midday. And that's because the predators normally go out either at sunrise or sunset, and they lay low and don't hunt during the day to conserve their energy. So the newborns are born during the day. And to further that, and I thought this was rather unique, the mothers have evolved to the point where if they don't feel safe, they can delay giving birth to their young for up to a month. Something that probably would not appeal to a lot of the ladies that have carried a child. So, but the mothers can, for safety reasons, delay giving birth for up to a month. Still, even with that, half of all the newborn impalas are killed within the first 2 to 3 weeks, many of them becoming victims of their predators. For safety, they they move in large numbers, and they have 3 distinct social groups: the territorial males, the herd of females and young, and after the males in that herd reach a certain age, they're kicked out and they form bachelor herds. The large groups then are split into the females, groups of 100. The bachelors normally are groups of up to 60, and they migrate to follow their food source. They go from higher to lower elevations with the changing of the seasons. Now, just down the street or down the road from where this watering hole was, where we had these first observations, we caught a picture of this guy running across the road in front of our vehicle. This is a warthog, and I'm afraid it's not a real good picture, but it was best we could do. He was on the run, and we had to get the camera ready quickly. The warthogs are a very unique animal, not only because of their appearance, but for other reasons too. They do have, if you could see it better, they do have 2 sets of tusks. The upper tusk are the ones that everybody knows the warthog by. They normally will be the canine teeth that will curl up and around the jaw. And those are the ones, like I say, that you see. The ones you don't see are the lower tusks. The lower tusks are actually concealed inside the mouth, and they're actually used to rub against the upper tusks to sharpen them. And they actually sharpen those tusks, the upper tusk, to a knife-like edge. And they use those as a weapon more than anything for hunting, because typically they will eat whatever food source is available. They're not real fussy, and they don't have to go out and hunt for their prey very often. They do have thick pads on their knees, because when they do eat or drink, they do get down on their front knees, and they have therefore developed these thick pads. They often are seen with mongoose and vervet monkeys. They allow those 2 animals to not only travel with them, but to nest with them so that they can help them grooming. They actually take ticks and small insects off of them and help them clean up. The sows among the warthogs travel in a group, and when they have their piglets, if something happens to their piglets, they will actually nurse and look after the rest of the young piglets in the group. So they're a very family-friendly group. And I was going to mention too, when the warthogs run, they run with their tail up in the air, and that's so when they're going through the grass, the other warthogs can find each other with that tail sticking up. So by the time we had driven across the southern edge of Madikwe Park, we had seen probably 30 elephants, an equal number of giraffes, and quite a few other species. So, and we haven't even gotten to our game lodge yet. So these animals are, some are unique species to South Africa. And we did not see, however, outside of the park, any of these animals. So these elephants are just hanging around the watering hole, cooling off. So the focus of our trip, or our ultimate destination, is the Tau Game Lodge. The lodge was listed as a 5-star resort, and it was considered one of the, if not the best resort in the game reserve. And this is what it looked like in 2017. Unfortunately, that was a year before we got there. Late in the season in 2017, they had a fire and it burned the lodge to the ground. So by the time we got there the following year, they had opened for business, but with a quickly assembled tent as the lodge. Now that could have been a disappointment, but we'll see here in just a minute what accommodations we did have. So this tent was used for dining and gathering. When the weather was not good, we would eat inside there. When the weather was good, we would walk out these doors, and there was a balcony out in the back. And that balcony then became our constant meeting place. There was a watering hole right over the railing of the balcony, and the animals came to you. You didn't have to wait for the photo safaris to go out and see the animals. Each of the guests had their own private hut where they stayed, and the huts were really, really nice. You see the stones on the left-hand side where they're stacked up there. That's actually an outdoor shower, and that was kind of a unique experience too. But on the back side of each of these lined along the edge of the watering hole, on the back side of each one, you had a balcony where you could go. If you had a problem with mosquitoes, there was a mosquito net over the bed. We did not have to use it. We had no problem whatsoever with mosquitoes. And we did periodically go outside to enjoy the night sound.
But where do you live? You live in a clearing or?
Sorry, yeah. You had a done that.
Take a big, lots of pictures of those nuts.
Yeah, it's very easy.
So that was what we listened to all night long. So the next morning was time for our first photo safari. We went over to the tent early in the morning, just as the sun was coming up. I believe, if I remember right, it was 6 o'clock in the morning. They gave you a cup of coffee and a donut or some kind of pastry. And then it was a matter of taking off on your morning safari. When you came back from the morning safari, you would have a full breakfast. So first day we get over there, and here's one of the vervets running up and down the railing next to the watering hole. These guys are really cute, but you're warned very early in your stay there to make sure that everything stays locked and closed, because the monkeys do know how to open doors and windows and get into where you're valuable, lock things up when you leave your hut. So they do live in family units, and they normally can be found in those family units. First morning, we were assigned to a vehicle and to a ranger in that vehicle, and he would be our host on each of our photo safaris. We went on 2 photo safaris a day for each of, I believe, 5 days. First day, we were with Kyla and her husband. She was a TV producer from Australia that was there possibly checking out the site for a program that they were thinking about putting together on the Madikwe Game Reserve. And the guy in the back seat was from Italy. His name was Giacomo, and he was just a jolly old Italian. He knew how to enjoy life. And so these were our companions for the first day. After the first day, Kyla, her husband, and Giacomo all left. And we were by ourselves with Derek, our driver, for the rest of the day. And after that first day, for the rest of the week. So we got to know Derek quite well. He was a young, I think he was 23 years old, young native of South Africa. And he definitely was knowledgeable. He knew everything there was to know about the animals, could identify birds from a quarter mile away, it seemed, was really good at spotting the game, which the game when it's back in the bush is kind of difficult to see. A lot of times they're protected quite well by the bushes and the trees and not easy to spot, but he was really good at spotting them. He would call out what we were coming up to a long time before we got there. So the first day we went outside of the game lodge area around the other side of the watering hole, and there were these elephants standing around. There's a little waterfall at the end of the pond. So we stopped and talked about the elephants and took some pictures. Also, at that end of the watering hole at that particular time was this guy. The picture on the left is the crocodile in the watering hole. The picture on the right was a video I took actually when we were eating. This guy crawled right up underneath the railing and on the deck where we were. And but the reason I put this photo on the left here is you see that small fence up there. That fence is an electric fence, but it is all that keeps the animals out of the game lodge area, and including this crocodile. Some of these animals I don't think would be bothered much by that electric fence, but apparently it's just enough to let them know that they're not welcome there. So when it comes to the crocodile, the thing I was curious about was what is the difference between a crocodile and an alligator? That I've heard that question asked a number of times and never had a satisfactory answer. So the main difference in appearance is that with the crocodile, you will always see, if their mouth is closed, you will always see their lower teeth. The lower teeth actually come up on the outside of the upper jaw when they close their mouth. The picture on the left being a crocodile, the picture on the right, even though his mouth is open, you can see the differences in the way the teeth are arranged in the jaw. The other difference is that the crocodile has a much narrower, kind of a V-shaped snout. It comes down to more of a point at the end if viewed head on, whereas the alligator is a much more rounded, kind of a U-shaped upper jaw, and that makes them easy to identify. So if you look at the two head on and at the same time, you can see the difference in the jaws. And that's the primary way to tell the difference in appearance. There are a number of different ways that the animals differ. For example, crocodiles are found all over the world, literally. The alligators are found only in Southeast United States and in one small part of China. And the crocodile tolerates salt water much easier than the alligators do. The alligators will go in salt water, but they don't really like it. They don't spend a lot of time there. The crocodiles are a much larger species. There was a case in Australia where they found a crocodile that was 23 feet long. Now, I've been told that the alligators can be up to 16, 17 feet, but every one I've ever seen only has 4 feet. But the alligator, although they can grow up to 17 feet long, they are much less aggressive than the crocodiles. So who are the predators that prey on these alligators? Well, once they're full grown, they're not bothered very much. But the babies are the victims of some of the big cats and the big snakes even. The babies can also be hunted by eagles and some of the larger birds. But the thing I really found interesting about the crocodile was that during a voluntary dive, they will go underwater. They can stay underwater for 15 to 20 minutes. I thought that was pretty good. But I found out that if they're threatened, they can stay underwater for more than a half an hour. And if they don't feel that the threat has gone away, they can stay underwater for as much as 2 hours. And so they are very, very good at laying low and avoiding anything that is trying to prey on them. And they also use that for a means of making surprise attacks. They will attack anything that comes down to the water up to the size of a wildebeest. Going back to the elephants here for a minute, this is a female elephant. The one thing that we found out from Derek was that elephants have internal genitalia, and therefore you don't use the usual means of telling whether an elephant is male or female. With the African elephant, there are a number of differences between them and the Asian elephants, mainly the size of the ears. But the main thing that differentiates the male from the female in the South African elephant is the forehead. If you look at the forehead on this elephant, you'll see it's quite angled. It comes out and then drops off very quickly. This makes this a identification for a female elephant. However, the other species or the other sex, the male elephant, has a much more rounded head. You see this guy walking along the way here while our guide was explaining to us how to tell the males from the females. You see all those rocks on the ground. Those are not rocks. Those are elephant droppings, and they were everywhere in that particular area. The elephants like to hang around at that end of the watering hole. You also see the impala in the background. Here's the female elephant. This shot gives you an idea of just how close to these animals you are. You're just waiting for this thing to turn around and grab a hold of your vehicle and flip it over, but they very rarely have any altercations. Elephants, of course, are not very aggressive animals. So as we leave the game lodge, heading out into the bush, first thing we noticed was how red the soil was on that particular end of the game reserve. And it is kind of a clay soil, but it has other minerals mixed into it, and that's what gives it its red color. Just like clay, however, if it gets wet, it will stick to everything. So just down the road, we came to our first group of guinea fowl. The guinea fowl are an interesting bird. They travel in groups. They usually walk in line, one behind the other. There's actually 6 different species of guinea fowls, but they're kind of like a chicken. They can fly, but they don't like to. They don't do it very often. And they normally will follow the leader and stay in these single file lines everywhere they go. And they will mimic whatever the leader does. So if the leader runs in circles, they'll run in circles. They can wander up to 6 miles in a single day. The females lay a large number of eggs, and about 50% of the eggs that are laid by the guinea fowl becomes somebody's breakfast. So they do have a challenge with survival. However, that being said, their average life expectancy in the wild is 10 to 20 years, so they don't do too bad. They have been domesticated, just like chickens have been here. These do periodically get domesticated. So one of the first rare sightings that we had, our ranger was driving down the road. He come to a screeching halt, and he found a cheetah track. And so he got on a radio, called to the other vehicles in the area and said, we've got cheetahs around here somewhere. Sure enough, before long, somebody called back that they had spotted the cheetahs. Now, the way they work these photo ops is that they don't want a bunch of vehicles piling in there and scaring the animals. So the first one that finds the animals resting in the bush will become the air traffic controller. That person will then call to the others by way of radio. Anybody that's interested can come, and they line up in a queue, and you can only have 3 vehicles at any given time around the animal. So once one of the vehicles has done all the photos that they want to do, talking about the animals and informing you whatever you would like to know about the animals, that vehicle will leave. The next one in line will be called in by the air traffic controller, and they will tell them which side of the bush to come in, how far in to come. And so most of the time you'll have at least 2 and usually 3 vehicles around the animals. By keeping that numbers down, they don't scare the animals, and the animals don't learn to be afraid of the vehicles coming in. The cheetah is just a beautiful, beautiful animal. And these animals are built for speed. And we'll get into that a little bit more later on. But speed-wise, they can go from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. That's about the same rate of acceleration as a modern day Corvette. They give you an idea how fast they accelerate. But the thing that I found most fascinating about these animals is at full speed, and full speed is about 80 miles an hour, they can turn in midair while they're sprinting at that speed, which must be real disheartening for the animals that are chasing them. There are thought to be about 7,000 cheetahs remaining in the wild, so they are very much an endangered species. Each one of these animals has between 2,000 and 3,000 spots. And because they are hunters and because their main weapon is their speed, they don't retain a lot of water. They drink about every 3 to 4 days, so that they don't have to carry the weight of the water around with them. They only drink 3 or 4 days, and usually during or close to mealtime. So we got back from our morning safari. Here's the vervet was running up and down the railing again, and took some pictures of the vervet. And then he went back to join his family. He came down to see if he could get some food off of one of the tables, and the staff kind of shoot him back up in the trees. So that morning, or actually for lunch that day, we had this happen. This is a birthday celebration, traditional African ceremony.
Oh, it's your 50th birthday.
The staff had started way back in the kitchen, and we heard them coming through the building. They all came out, did this birthday celebration dance and song for the young lady that had her birthday, and gave everybody a chance to take pictures. It was real good sport about the whole thing. It was quite unique, exciting in itself. So then that afternoon, for our afternoon photo safari, we went back out on the road. First thing we did was we spotted a zebra. First thing we found out was that the zebra is actually called a zebra by the natives. And so we were corrected on that. The thing that we found most fascinating about these, you would think with a color scheme like the zebra, that they would be easy to spot. They are not. We would be going down the road and our ranger would say, zebra ahead 1/4 mile, and he would see him. Nobody else could spot him until we were almost on top of him. So this is on our evening photo safari. We went out just before sundown, and this was over by another watering hole. We caught these rhinoceros hanging around. And he walked across the road and then stopped to pose for a picture. He's got his other friend over there. So I had mentioned before that we did not see a black rhino. Now, to you and me, these rhinoceros look to be anything but white. So I got curious of what the difference was between a white rhino and a black rhino. And so we'll talk briefly about the rhinoceros. As a member of the Big Five. Like I said before, there are the two species, the black and white rhino. They are an herbivore. One of the unique things about the horn is it does break quite often, and it does regrow. It's actually keratin, similar to our fingernails. And so the horn is used as a weapon. It's also used for digging and for kind of defending itself, I guess I would say. The adult rhinos can be up to 13 feet long and 6 feet tall and weigh 3,000 pounds. All of that taken into consideration, they can still run up to 35 miles an hour, which is faster than man can run. So you do not want to be conceived as any kind of a threat to a rhinoceros, because they will attack anything that they perceive as a threat. They don't have any natural predators. In fact, they do have one bird that quite often is spotted with them. It's called the oxpecker. The oxpecker rides on the back of the rhino and picks the ticks off of the rhino and helps it stay clean. The rhino will get down in the mud and they'll wallow around. They love, of course, the mud and the water to cool them off. But in addition to that, the mud that sticks to them actually works as a sunscreen and keeps them from getting sunburned. But that doesn't answer the question, what's the difference between a black and a white rhino? So here we've got the white rhino on the right, black rhino on the left. The white rhino is actually a bit of a misnomer. A lot of the words in the native language are Germanic in nature, and the word for the description of this rhino is actually from the German word, I believe it's pronounced Weit, W-E-I-T, when translated into Afrikaan, I'm sorry. The word means wide, and if you look at the lower jaw, you see it's wide and flat. And so this is actually the wide rhino, and the name kind of got translated and slung around a little bit until it became known as the white rhino. The black rhino is simply named that in contrast to the wide jaw. It has a pointed upper jaw. The reason being that the white rhino eats grass off the ground. The flat lower jaw allows it to get right down to the ground to take maximum advantage of any vegetation that it's eating. The black rhino eats leaves and fruit from trees and downed bushes. And so the pointed upper lip allows it to strip those items from the landscape. Next animal we came across was the wildebeest. And of course, they don't have these things lined up, so you never know when you go out on these photo safaris what you're going to see next. Well, the wildebeest is also known as a gnu, G-N-U. It is a large member of the antelope family. Some scientists believe that these wildebeests have been around for 2.5 million years. It's a very antique, if you will, animal. It's been around going through evolution ever since. There's two types of wildebeest, the blue wildebeest and the black wildebeest. The blue wildebeest is the one that you always hear of or see with these massive migrations. They will follow the food source during the seasons and migrate long distances. One of the things I found interesting was that the wildebeest will actually migrate with the zebra. And the reason for that is the zebra has a digestive system that allows it to eat the top off of all the dead, dry grasses that they migrate through. when they do that, that exposes the fresher, newer grasses beneath for the wildebeest. So the two work together very well as a pair. The zebra has a very good memory, and they remember the migration route much better than the wildebeest does. But it's not all the zebra. The wildebeest brings something to the migration also, in that they have an excellent sense of smell. So they can smell a water source from a long ways off. They can also smell predators. And so by migrating with the zebra, they take advantage of both species' strong points. The wildebeest gives birth once a year, usually in January or February, and every year it's estimated that between 300 and 500,000 wildebeest are born. So they are not endangered species, but that large number is the reason for the large migrations that you probably have seen on National Geographic or similar programs. The wildebeest, by the way, have these stripes on their side. So I believe that they are a member of the antelope family. They're not too distant related from the zebra. It's a picture of the sunset over the man-made watering hole at one point in the park. And back on the other side, sitting up on top, was one of the Toyota 4x4 Land Rovers. This is the vehicle of choice of these photo safaris. They are open. When you're among these wild animals, there is nothing around you, and you have to get yourself used to that very, very quickly. That back seat, by the way, you see there is quite a ways above and beyond the back axle. So it is like riding a bucking bronco when you're up there. It can be a lot of fun through the bumps. They seat 10 people plus the driver. This is one of the landmarks on the west end of the park, was the Van Tweedport escarpment. I searched and searched and could not find where that name came from, other than the fact that it is a Dutch name. A lot of the towns and landscape features in South Africa are Dutch names or have Dutch names. And so the name is traceable, but I don't know who Rant Van Tweedport was. This is my attempt at taking an artistic picture of the first sunset. So every evening when you go out on these photo safaris, as the sun goes down, they would stop out in the middle of nowhere, set up a table, serve you refreshments, have a little snack, and then you'd hop in the Jeep, head back to your game lodge. This is what the ride back was. Rangers stand constantly one side to the other with a reflection of eyes dark out of his spotlight. And you can tell from the color of the light that was in his eyes what animal he was finding when he did find one. So the next day, I call this the Day of the Cats. It started out differently, but by the evening, we ended up with several close encounters with the lions. So first thing was the elephants and the rhinoceros. And you see there's a little baby rhino here. It was out for a walk with mom.
Although, yeah, this female there is still a female. I wouldn't want to.
Down the road a little ways, we came to one of these, and there was a lot of these around. These are termite mounds. These are rather unique in that the termite mound is made up of a series of tunnels underneath this very porous outer surface that go around a center, what they call a chimney. It's the hole that goes down vertically through the middle of the mound. And the air flowing through these tunnels circulating around the chimney actually cools the chimney. So the cold air in the chimney will sink and go down to the bottom of the chimney. Down at the bottom of the chimney is where the royal chamber is. And in the royal chamber, of course, is the king and queen termite. The queen termite is quite the reproduction animal. The queen lays approximately 1,000 eggs every day for up to 45 years. So that's a lot of eggs. After having laid that many eggs, of course, it's very hard for her to maintain her girlish figure. So the workers are periodically called down to the royal chamber to move the queen from one part of the royal chamber to another, because the queen does not get around too well anymore after laying all those eggs. Just down the road from there, we came to one of a number of shepherd's trees that we came across. The shepherd's tree is called the tree of life. And the reason for that is that nearly every part of the tree is usable. The fruits and leaves retain water. And when the giraffes eat the fruits and the leaves, they get that water source that they need. The roots not only can be used to make coffee, but it's actually used to make coffee with sugar because it is a very sweet root. And so the coffee is basically, you don't get your choice between cream and sugar. The roots can also be pulverized into a porridge, and you can eat that. And also, if they pulverize it even further and turn it into powder, it's used to keep milk and butter fresh. I don't know exactly how that's done, but that's just what we were told. The leaves of the shepherd's tree are the sole food source of 2 different species of butterflies. So it is the reason that these butterflies are able to live and flourish in South Africa. They are not, however, used by humans for shade very much because of the fact that they are used by the animals quite often for shade. And for that very reason, there are usually a lot of ticks around the bottom of these shepherd's tree. Really nice looking tree. And we saw a lot of them out there, and you can imagine how glad the animals are to see that shade out in the middle of nowhere. The next one we came to is one of my favorites. This is the kudu. A kudu is a very large member of the antelope family. The name itself means part deer, part zebra. If you see the stripes on the hindquarters of the kudu, that's the reason for that. They stand anywhere from 4 to 5 feet tall as adults. But even with those big long horns, the kudu would rather run than fight. The horns are there for mating purposes. This is somewhat similar to the deer or the elk up in our mountains, in that during the rut, they will lock horns with another male. And the two will push and pull until one of them decides that this isn't where I want to be, and they will take off, leaving that kudu to fix up its surroundings and wait for the female to come for mating purposes. However, it is not uncommon because of the corkscrew type appearance of the horns for these horns to become locked when 2 of these males get into this pushing and pulling ritual during the rut. Quite often they will hook each other and not be able to get free again. This leads eventually to the death of both of them because they can no longer graze and feed, and they will both die in the process of trying to win this mating ritual. The kudu lives in the wild anywhere up to 15 years, and they will actually migrate. They will follow their food source from high elevation to low elevation with the seasons. Here we've got the zebra. The zebra is a close relative to the horse. However, the zebra cannot be domesticated. They've tried and they cannot domesticate them. They are, by the way, a black animal with white stripes. In case you were wondering which, it is actually a black animal. The males will go out and find a territory of its own, fix it up the way it wants, and wait for a female to walk by and see what a nice bachelor pad he's got. And that's how they usually attract the females for mating. And you see that one is very pregnant. So then we got to the cats. We had a call that the lions were in a particular area. We went over there and we got up. We found a pride of lions and we got several opportunities to get up close to them. You see right there how close to these animals that you are, and reminding you again, these are open vehicles. So this was kind of have to get used to the fact that you're sitting right there next to these animals. This male, by the way, the male lions are known and easy to pick out because of their manes. This is Kalahari species, subspecies of lion. So they have a dark mane. This guy is hiding behind a tree, but he eventually turns around here and sits down again. The roar of a lion, by the way, can be heard up to 5 miles away. And this was found out here in Boise, especially because the lion down at the Boise Zoo was pretty much on its own. It was in an open enclosure, or a glassed-in enclosure, I should say, instead of in a cage. And when they brought the giraffes to town, they built the giraffe enclosure right across the road at the zoo from the lion. And the lion, having been used to being there on its own, the first day it went out when the giraffe was across the road, it looked out through its window and saw that giraffe. It let a roar go that was heard by many of the neighbors around the zoo down there. And they got a lot of calls at the police station, people wanting to know what it was, because they had not heard that lion roar previously. The lions are the biggest of the cats outside of the tigers, which are found primarily in Asia.
In the middle.
But the lions are king of the jungle, like they say.
She's the one that
Life expectancy of a lion in the wild is 10 to 14 years. These, of course, are 3 female members of the pride. And off to the side is, I believe, 4 cubs. And they were just so cute. Made you want to pick them up and take them home, but I don't think that would have been a good idea.
That's a good question.
This is the big old lion. Now this lion, this male is not the male, or they don't believe it's the male that sired the cubs. There was 2 males in this pride. They think that this is just one that was allowed to join the pride. You'll see the other male a little bit later on. Anyway, after that encounter, it was back to the old watering hole for lunch. Had some very nice meals, a few exotic foods. I was a little bit worried about the foods because I'm a very fussy eater. I was afraid we were going to have nothing but salads. Turns out they love their meat dishes also. So I actually ate quite well. That evening, we went back out, and one of the game lodges not too far from town called out on the radio that they had pride lions just outside of their gate. So we headed over there, and sure enough, we found these lions. Now, there was only This was just before sundown, so there was only a few vehicles around. We very quickly got up to where we could observe them and watch and see the cub playing with mom's tail. But they were quite docile, or so we thought, until this male, remember this is not the father, he stepped in, and I don't know if mom didn't like him getting close to the cubs or what the deal was. The ranger didn't know what was going on. We asked the ranger if he was nervous when they got very vocal and active like that. And he said he didn't know. He had never seen them act like that before, so he didn't know what was going on either. It was the male head of this pride. By the way, in a pride, the females do all the hunting. The males do not. So the females are responsible for hunting the prey. However, they will not do the cooking. So we're still basically in the same position. Just a couple minutes later, we're kind of observing the cubs, watching them lay around, just take it easy.
Daniel, come in.
Lions are very territorial, so this pride of lions stays primarily to the west end of the game reserve. The male's lion, in case you were wondering, the male's job, I should say, the job of the male lion is to protect the pride. That's the reason that the females do the hunting, but the male protects them from any predators or anybody butting into their territory. The other job the male has is to make sure that there's no leftovers in mealtime. Lions only eat, by the way, every other day or so. And that was the reason even at the zoos, they will not feed the lions every day. So it's not their normal way. Well, this is the one that really got our attention. I mentioned that the roar of the lion can be heard from 5 miles away. We were sitting probably 30 feet away from these lions. And when this happened, and that got the attention of the other male. And he decides it's time to step in. So when this was going on, like I said, we were about 30 feet away. Our vehicle shook when those lions roared. You cannot possibly get any idea at all of just how loud that was from watching this video. But it was a real eye-opener. It was intense. And of course, we're sitting there in this vehicle trying to make sure that the ranger's sure that, yes, this is safe. This is a terrible video. Just in yourself. Lion talk to the one that had look at the belly of this lion. Well, the other male was probably a mile and a half away by this point, and they were talking back and forth to each other over quite a distance. So at that point, we left, we circled around. We were about a mile away from the point where that occurred. And we come to this line of steenbok that are standing in a line, almost every one of them frozen in their tracks, looking back over their shoulder, trying to make sure they knew exactly where that lion was that was making all the noise. They were scared. And for good reason. The steenbok, along with the impala, are one of the favorite food sources of the lions. So they knew they had to stay safe. Steenbok is a small member of the antelope family. They eat fruit and short vegetation. They very rarely drink water, just like the giraffe. They get most of the water from the vegetation that they eat. They have a distinctive large ear, and inside the large ear is usually white with black finger marks inside. They also have a distinctive black blaze down the bridge of their nose. The males have short, straight horns, anywhere from 3 to 8 inches long. And unfortunately, like I said before, they are one of the favorite food sources, along with the impala, for all the large predator cats. When these guys run, they have a very distinctive zigzag pattern that they're running. They do not run straight. They're not all that fast. Most of the time, their predators are faster than they are. So they run in a zigzag pattern just out of normal tendencies. They, by the way, the young typically, I found out, are suckled for about 3 months. And then the females at age 3 to 5 months become sexually mature. The males become sexually mature at 9 months. And again, this is evolution looking after them, because they need to reproduce in great numbers, because so many of them do not make it through the first several weeks or months of their life. Their life expectancy is only about 7 years in the wild. So we headed back over, after encountering the lions and the steenbok, we headed back over to the old watering hole again. And we did spot these Cape buffalo. The buffalo is one of the big 5 in Africa. They also are the most aggressive of the big 5. So we did not come very close to them. This picture was taken over quite a long distance. And like I said, all of these pictures were taken on my phone. So I did not have the benefit of a telephoto lens to get in closer. But the buffalo is a large animal. They can weigh up to a ton. They're very aggressive. They have a long gestation period, 11 and a half months. Some people have told me that's the reason they're aggressive, is that long gestation period. Their calves are born during the rainy season. While resting in a herd, they will all stand around and face in a direction. And by doing so, the direction they face is casting a vote of what direction they think the herd should go when they start moving again. Majority rules, whichever direction is chosen by the majority of them, that's the direction they will head when they're done eating. Excuse me. So day 4, this day did not go as planned for Derek. We got just outside of the confines of the lodge, and we had a flat tire. He had to get out of the vehicle. Well, he changed the tire, and we gave him a hard time about that, of course. Threw this one in there. This was actually in the watering hole just across the railing from the table where we were eating. You see the crocodile out swimming in the water, and the birds are right there on the grass next to it. Apparently they did not feel threatened. So later that evening, we were out waiting in the lodge right away, and Dylan was doing it for dip our way. My wife's station had a little name for shell that was named. Named it good. Being down in Kentucky. They don't get a lot of rain in the Savannah. But this was definitely one of those storms.
One very wet
storm, maybe. We saw this guy off in the distance on our way back to the lodge. When we got back to the lodge, this temporary tent that they had built for dining during inclement weather came in quite handy. In fact, the wind was blowing so hard and the rain coming down so hard that the members of the crew there had to go and hold this temporary folding door up. They were afraid it was going to blow right in on the end of the tent. So day 5 was date night. This was our last overnight stay. And so we headed out early in the morning past the Ramp Van Tweedport Mountains. Saw another zebra or two hiding in the grasses. Came down the road, and this young guy was right there next to the road, and he was just so cute. This was just a baby elephant. The herds of elephant, we didn't talk much about elephants. The herds consist of mothers, sisters, and female cousins, all of whom help raise the calves. The bulls usually hit puberty about age of 14. They leave the herd and join a bachelor herd. Well, the bachelor herd kind of hangs together until it's mating time. At any time that they would like, they can leave that herd and potentially find a mate. They give birth once every 5 years. They are, however, quite smart, and they're able to mimic other animals and other people around them. They show compassion. There's several characteristics of elephants that mimic humans. They can show compassion. They grieve the loss of a loved one. They remember loved ones, even if separated for long periods of time. They do harbor grudges. And when reunited, they will recognize a friend or a relative after long separation.
Sweet.
So this was rush hour in the savannah.
Mom.
These guys were walking parallel to the road, so we stopped, and sure enough, the trail came up on the road, and there they were.
How beautiful.
They're just so cute, those elephants walking down the road. Now, remember our discussion before, we know that because of the rounded forehead, that this is a bull elephant. And just down the road from there, we found the wildebeest out rolling in the mud. They use mud the same way the rhinoceros do. They use it to cool themselves off, and it actually forms a sunscreen so that if they were out during the day, they would not sunburn. So we were kind of catching a little bit of everybody on this day. You can see how they kind of blend into the bush there. They don't really stand out like a sore thumb like you would think. Now, I am not a bird person, but this, I'm told, is a lilac-breasted roller. And this was one of the few birds that I was able to get a picture of where it didn't fly away as soon as I got my camera started up. So I threw this one in there. We saw dozens of different species of birds, but I do not remember what they were. I was unable to get pictures of any of them. So I threw this one in here just to represent the bird groups. I'm told there are about 300 different species of birds in the Madikwe Game Reserve, in case anybody is a birder and they would like to go there to spot some of them. So as the sun was going down, we had circled around. We had seen quite a few sightings that evening, and we were headed back. And eventually the sun went down, it got dark. We came around the corner, and here was our surprise. The last night, the crew goes out and sets up dinner out in the bush outside of the game lodge. And so we pulled in there. They were all standing there ready to serve us our meal. There weren't a lot of people staying at the lodge, so most of these people were there to take care of our every need. We had a beautiful, fancy dinner set up on tables out in the bush. And being that it was our honeymoon, it was kind of a neat way to spend the last evening of our visit there. So that was the last evening. The last day, we were supposed to depart the lodge at about noon that day. So when we got up at 6 o'clock that morning, Derek said, "Where do you want to go? Where do you want to?" It's one of the big five. We haven't seen the leopard. Well, he had found out on the radio that the leopards were all the way on the other end of the park. So we took off And we drove much farther, much faster than typical so that we could get to the other end of the park and back again within the 2-hour time frame that we had to get back so that we could catch our ride. This fence is the northern border of the game reserve. That dirt road is the Botswana border. On the other side of that road is where the malaria mosquitoes live. This is the Durdeport Gate. I believe that's the way it's pronounced, on the northeast corner of the park. We had to go all the way down here so that we could catch this gravel road heading south again to get to where the leopards were. And as we started down there, we found this guy walking alongside the road. And he just took off and walked right in front of us.
He's gonna walk
Slowed
a
down our
lot
progress.
That is
But not for too long. We're back off the road again. Derek referring to his map. This road is actually on that map. Idea of what most of the road looked like. So he's talking on the radio to the air traffic controller who had spotted this family of leopards. And we got back to where they are, and we discovered these leopards are a light colored skin with dark spots. These spots are called rosettes, and we'll have another picture here where you can see them a little bit better. The leopard can run at about 35 miles an hour, but the amazing thing about them is they can jump straight forward from their haunches. They can jump straight forward about 20 feet in the air, jump vertically about 10 feet. So these are one of the animals that do periodically jump over the fence and get out of the park. The males and females only congregate during the mating season, and they are very territorial. They can give birth any time of the year, usually 2 to 3 cubs at a time. The mother stays with the cubs for the first couple months. And they have several distinct calls where they can communicate with each other. They're mostly nocturnal. The black leopards, by the way, have dark spots. So on the black skin, they appear to be all black, and they normally are referred to as black panthers. In case you were wondering what the difference was between a panther and a leopard, it's just the panther is a black leopard. Pound for pound, they are the strongest of the big cats. And so looking at this, I was curious. I was trying to figure out, because it had been several days since we had seen a cheetah. I was thinking, boy, that looks a lot like a cheetah. So I put this in there so that you can see the differences in the two. They do look a lot alike in that they both had the dark spots on the lighter skin. However, there are a number of differences. First of all, the leopard on the left, you can see that the spots are what they call rosetta spots, or open spots with color in the middle of the dark outline. They have a much larger body, head, and claw than the cheetah. Remember, the leopard is built for strength and power. The cheetah is built for speed. The cheetah has round spots. They also have the distinctive black tear mark that runs from the eye down along the side of the nose. The leopard can run about 35 miles an hour, where the cheetah can go at speeds up to 80 miles an hour. And look at the difference in size of the head and the paws on these two animals. And you can see where the cheetah is definitely made for running at high speeds. Somewhere I missed a slide. I was going to tell you, the leopard will, when it kills its prey, it will drag it up in a tree. It's strong enough to actually take the prey up into the tree. So if there's any other animals in the area, he doesn't have to worry about defending his meal. And there was a case where the National Geographic film crew was out filming, and they filmed a leopard tracking down and then killing a baboon. And the leopard started to drag the baboon back towards the tree, and it noticed there was a baby baboon still clutching onto its now dead mother. And the mother, this female leopard, was so touched by this, it actually carried the baby baboon up in the tree and sat and protected it all night long from the hyenas that were in the area. So they observed this. Their motherly instinct is quite strong in these animals. So then, going back here, as we were leaving the park, we did catch our ride back to the airport. As we were leaving the park, I got just two pictures that I threw in here. This was an old cemetery, and it's right outside the park, and you'll notice it looks quite cluttered. Well, the clutter is actually stones and rocks that are put on top of the graves. That keeps the animals from digging the bodies up once they're laid in the cemetery. And a lot of the cemeteries in that area are similar to this in that they have to put rocks on top of the graves to keep them from being dug up. The other one was this beautiful tree. It's called the jacaranda tree. And it actually is not native to South Africa. It was brought to South Africa from South Central South America by British settlers back in the beginning of the 20th century. But it was brought to South Africa and it became so explosive as far as its reproduction and ability to grow in the area that it has now become an iconic site in South Africa. And they're just beautiful. They only bloom for a short period of time in their spring, which is our winter. And we happen to be there at the right time to see a number of these, and they're just a gorgeous, gorgeous tree. So that is most of the presentation. I thought I'd stop here. Anybody that wanted to take a break or ask any questions, if we have any questions, we can.
Yes, we do have one question, and it was posed before the lion encounter, but the question is, since you were in an open Jeep on safari, did you ever feel you were in danger? And if so, what circumstance or circumstances?
Okay, I guess maybe I touched on the answer to that during that lion encounter when they kind of didn't get along with each other and didn't play nice. It was a little bit scary. Alicia has a tendency to scare a little bit easier than I do. And so I think she was going to be a little bit more withdrawn during that, but she had actually not wanted to go out on the safari that night, so she was back in the lodge. So I was there by myself. It didn't seem to bother the ranger, and therefore it didn't seem to bother me. Had the ranger gotten upset, I think we might have gotten upset.
All right, are there any more questions? I don't see any more in chat.
Okay.
All right, well then.
I do have a few slides
Yes,
left
please.
here. If we have any time and no questions, we can go through those.
We do have a few minutes.
Okay. One of the things that we entertained ourselves with while we were out on these safaris was finding out what the collective nouns are for a lot of these different animals. And by collective nouns, we're talking about animals like the lion. Of course, everybody knows that a group of lions is called what? A pride. Okay. But some of the other animals are a little bit less likely to be known, at least to us, because we're not used to being around these animals. So I wanted to throw some of these in there too and see if anybody could guess any of these. Next one is the impala. Now remember that the impala is a member of the antelope family, so it probably is not a huge surprise to know that the collective noun for impala is a herd. Now we do have giraffes at the Boise Zoo. If you've ever talked to anybody down there, you may know that the collective noun for giraffes is a tower of giraffes. Kind of makes sense once you hear it. Termites, a group of termites is known as a brood. And I thought that was kind of cool, but now we got some that are really unique and well thought out. I think the crocodiles. What do you call a group of crocodiles? Well, they're referred to as a float of crocodiles. You saw that one floating in the water and you'll know why They tend to do that. Elephants. What is the one thing you think of when you think of an elephant? Is usually they say that elephants have a good memory. Well, it's a memory of elephants. The next one is the rhinoceros. And this one I thought was really unique. I got a big kick out of this one. A group of rhinoceros is called a crash. The zebra, or zebra as we were told it was, quite a unique color scheme on the zebra. So it's maybe not a big surprise that a group of zebra is known as a dazzle. The wildebeest, they're not always the smartest animal. They migrate with the zebra because the zebra brings a lot of intelligence to the group. But the wildebeest collective noun is a confusion of wildebeest. Water buffalo, and I don't know where this one came from, other than the fact that they're very aggressive. A group of water buffalo is called an obstinacy. The cheetahs that we saw on the first day, they hunt sometimes in groups, and that may be the reason that they're known as a coalition of cheetah. And the big, powerful leopard that we were just talking about, the group of leopards is known as a leap of leopards. And then I had to throw this one in because my nickname is Frog. A group of frogs is known as a knot of frogs. So anyway, wanted to throw those in and thank everybody for tuning in for this presentation. I hope the pictures were good enough to get the idea across to you that this was a fascinating trip. And
Well,
that's it.
all right, Jerry, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, for taking us on this adventure with you.
Yeah, that was
I've got to say, with your font of information, Jack Hanna should feel like his job is in jeopardy. I think you're ready to be his successor. Once again, everyone, please look at the bottom of your chat screen in the lower right-hand corner, and you will see the link to our survey. And I believe Sheena will also send a link to that survey to you in an email. NKA values your opinion because it does help us improve our classes. I believe that is it for today. So Sheena, if you will end our session. Thank you, everyone, so much.
Thank you, Carol.
Thanks. Thanks, Jerry. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.